We begin tonight with more on the developing situation in Washington, D.C. You are looking live at the U.S. Capitol, where protesters have now cleared the scene after spending much of the afternoon massing for protests, with some entering the building by force. Good evening, I'm Mark Kiesling. If you are just turning in, we get you up to speed on what has been going on this afternoon in Washington. Following a rally by President Trump, dozens of people breached security perimeters at the Capitol, forcing the lockdown of the Capitol building and halting the vote to certify the Electoral College results. Police say at least one person was shot inside the Capitol building, and at least one explosive device was found near the Capitol, but law enforcement officials say that device is no longer a threat. Videos posted earlier on social media showed protesters fighting with Capitol Police near barriers meant to block access to the building. Here's what President Trump shared in a message to those protesters.
You have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order. We have to respect our great people in law and order. We don't want anybody hurt.
President Trump posted that video message to Twitter around 3:15 this afternoon. President-elect Joe Biden called for the restoration of what he called simple decency. He also called the taking of the Capitol building an insurrection. He called on the mob to pull back and allow the work of democracy to take place. With the very latest, we go to Whitney Wild in Washington.
Pro-President Trump rioters breaching the halls of Congress.
They've essentially overtaken the front of the Capitol. This is an overwhelming number of people for the Capitol Police.
Triggering an armed standoff at the doors of the House floor. Protesters caught on camera taking the seat of the President of the Senate.
We've been hearing flashbangs every few minutes for the last hour.
Protesters have penetrated the Capitol. Tear gas has been deployed. Members are now have masks that are in the Capitol.
Vice President Mike Pence rushed out of the Capitol building to safety. The entire House and Senate floors evacuated and lawmakers told to shelter in place.
This is despicable. This is not who we are as a country.
President Trump encouraged the protesters earlier Wednesday.
Right here, we're going to walk down to the Capitol, and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. And we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
And later responded to the breach of the Capitol.
You have to go home now. We have to have peace. We have to have law and order.
I'm Whitney Wild reporting.
We will continue to keep you up to date on the latest both on air and online at WSILTV.com. Illinois Congressman Mike Bost released a statement around 3 o'clock this afternoon saying he was safe. He went on to say Americans cherish our right to free speech and peaceful protest, but what's happening in our nation's capital is not just unacceptable, it's un-American. He added, please pray for peace and the safety of our brave law enforcement officers and first responders. Another ally of President Trump's, U.S. Senator Josh Hawley from Missouri, issued the following statement. Thank you to the brave law enforcement officials who have put their lives on the line. The violence must end. Those who attacked police and broke the law must be prosecuted, and Congress must get back to work and finish its job. Now to the runoff elections in Georgia. Democrats have been declared the winners in both races. Reverend Raphael Warnock defeated Republican Senator Kelly Loeffler last night, and this afternoon, John Ossoff was declared the winner of his race with incumbent David Perdue. With the two Democratic victories, the Senate will have a 50-50 seat split, which means Vice President Kamala Harris will have any tie-breaking vote. We will continue our breaking news coverage in just a moment, but first, let's get a check of weather with Jim.
A lot more clouds around today, and we had talked about the clouds would start to show up today, so not quite as comfortable as what we've been seeing the past few days, but temperatures still on the mild side of what we expect in January. These clouds eventually going to lead to a chance for a little winter mixture, but not tonight. Dry skies showing up right now in our live camera in Jackson County as we look out over parts of Carbondale. Nothing falling, and it will likely be early tomorrow morning before we should expect anything. Certainly in the Carbondale area, there is a chance we'll see some light mixed precipitation move into southeast Missouri later tonight. Forecast maps into motion, and a couple of things show up even as we just run through the nighttime hours. One, most of us should expect temperatures just slightly below the freezing mark. We see the pink line on there. That's the freezing line, and that could set up a winter mixture in our westernmost counties. I think we're going to see a lot of cold rain out of this, but where we will see some snow, minor accumulations, especially in places like Carter, Ripley, and Wayne counties in southeast Missouri. Temperatures later this evening into the middle 30s already, and looks like temperatures early tomorrow morning likely going to start off right around 30. It is going to be an uncomfortable day to be outside tomorrow, no matter what falls from the sky. We'll talk more about that in the forecast coming up in just a bit.
We told you about those protests on Capitol Hill. A much smaller group of Trump supporters gathered today in Springfield. This rally was much more peaceful than the events in Washington, D.C. Capitol Bureau Chief Mike Militich joins us live from the state capitol with more on that gathering.
Mark, good evening. People here in Springfield say it's not even about Donald Trump anymore. They want to make sure that the election is a fair process with fair results, even though there is no clear evidence that there was election fraud back in November. Many people had Stop the Steal signs. They also had Trump flags, Trump hats, even Fire Pritzker signs. A few of the supporters watched a live feed of the protests in Washington. I asked one of the rally organizers if she supported the violent protesters breaking into the nation's capital.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, and, you know, where's been the uproar when they've burnt down cities all summer long? They were burning down cities, and no, you know, there's no problem with that apparently. Do I think they should have breached the Capitol? I don't know. I wasn't there.
The woman didn't want to provide her real name to me because she says people started to make threats towards her after organizing previous rallies to support President Trump. She said the movement won't die when President-elect Joe Biden is officially in office, as they have, quote, awakened a sleeping giant. Now, Governor Pritzker has ordered Illinois State Police to have stricter security here at the Capitol building and the Bank of Springfield Center just a few blocks away, as lawmakers are set to return here to Springfield on Friday. For now, reporting live in Springfield, Mike Militich, News 3.
Insecurity in the election process has made national headlines. Tonight, 2 Southern Illinois election officials are speaking out about the process locally and the confidence they have in the system. News 3's Danny Valle joins us live in studio with more. Danny, what did they say about the procedures for investigating claims of voter fraud locally?
It takes about a year to prepare for the November general election, and despite changes brought by the coronavirus, election night went smoother than expected.
We were able to concentrate more on some of the issues that we hadn't been able to concentrate on, and made some changes that I think are better for the voters and make it easier for our election judges and accommodate all.
As protesters and lawmakers across the country reject election results, Johnson County Clerk Robin Harper Whitehead, a Republican, says results in the county went untampered. Claims of voter fraud, non-existent.
There has been issues where people have made complaints about something, and we were able to take those very seriously. Nothing was ever, produced out that there was voter fraud. It was just something that wasn't understood.
Jackson County Clerk Frank Byrd, a Democrat, says it was one of the cleanest elections he's worked. Byrd says an election like that with high turnout is one that every election official strives to accomplish.
And like most county clerks in this state, and it doesn't matter their party affiliation, they all work hard, Danny. I mean, it's a hard job, but I love it. And we all do. And we work to make sure we serve the people.
Both clerks say one of the most important ways to serve the people is to build trust through transparency, which both say is paramount. That can help put calls of voter fraud to rest.
You have each party have equal amount of members that come in and oversee the election, so that way they don't feel like they're being isolated or left out. I try to include everybody as much as I can.
I do hate it that all these states are going through so much, but I do feel good about the county clerks in Illinois and how well they work with the State Board of Elections of working together to prevent this.
And since July and September, both clerks have been preparing for upcoming elections in Illinois. That includes a consolidated primary next month and a consolidated general election in April. Those will consist of local and no statewide races. Live in the studio, Danny Valle, News 3.
The Louisville, Kentucky Police Department has fired 2 more detectives involved in the deadly shooting of Breonna Taylor. Taylor was shot and killed by police in her apartment during a botched raid last March. Officer Miles Cosgrove was fired for use of deadly force. He fired 16 rounds into Taylor's apartment and failed to activate his body camera. Officer Joshua Jane was also fired. He wrote the search warrant for that raid and was untruthful about certifying Taylor's former boyfriend had been getting packages at the home. No charges have been filed for the killing of Taylor. Now to the latest COVID-19 numbers in Illinois. Public health officials announced more than 7,500 new cases of COVID-19 today and 139 additional deaths. That brings the state's total to nearly 1 million cases and more than 17,000 deaths. Some are asking when the general public will start getting the COVID-19 vaccine. The city of Paducah and McCracken County officials took to social media today to answer questions during a virtual news conference. News 3's Maya Skinner was part of it, and she joins us in the studio with more.
That's right, Mark. Many people in the community are either ready to get or just nervous about the vaccine. Paducah Mayor George Bray, McCracken County Judge Executive Craig Clymer, and Purchase District Health Department Director Kent Coster spent almost an hour providing some clarity about when vaccines will be available and when they'll be distributed. Coster emphasized that the state is currently in phase 1A for vaccines with long-term care facilities, assisted living centers, and health care workers. He says all surrounding counties must complete the vaccines for those groups before moving on to 1B. They also listed numbers of vaccines for local hospitals, including Mercy Lords, which received 975 doses and will get a second round on Thursday with an additional 100 doses.
I can assure you that we're doing the best that we can, and I'm trying to get as much vaccine into the county as I can, and to line up our healthcare workers to get vaccinated.
Phase 1B includes vaccines for adults older than 70, first responders, and K-12 school personnel. There's no timetable on when that will happen yet, but there are plans for another press conference, so stay tuned for that. Live in the studio, Maya Skinner, News 3.
And coming up, Jim's in with the latest on our weather. That's next on News 3 at 5.